pandemic in accordance with Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04. Please note that in accordance with the Governor's emergency order, we have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing this meeting. Instructions are provided on our agenda on the City of Concord's website at concordnh.legstar.com/calendar.aspx. We are utilizing the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. All members of the City Council have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting, and the public has access to listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through clicking on the following website address: us02 web.zoom.us/j/812-04-172-709. If any member of the public does not have website access, they may dial the telephone number of 1-929-205-6099. If dialing from a landline, you may call in toll-free at 877-853-5257. The webinar ID number is 812-0417-2709. For those who want to provide public testimony in the public hearing portion of this meeting, and you are connected to the Zoom website, you may click on the raised hand icon in the attendee section and make the request. When the time is appropriate, you'll be recognized by me and can provide your testimony. For members of the public who are participating by phone, you may dial *9 to alert me that you want to testify. We will not be using the chat function in Zoom for this meeting. Please note that testimony is only allowed for agenda items that have been scheduled for a public hearing, and public participation is not authorized for other items on the agenda. If anyone has a problem accessing the meeting, please call 603-230-3718 or send an email to citycouncilmeeting@concordnh.gov. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking roll call attendance. When you state your presence at the meeting, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required by the Right to Know law. Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Councillor Bouchard.
Present, at home, alone.
Mayor Boulay.
Present in my office alone.
Councillor Champlin.
Present, at home, alone.
Councillor Fennessy.
I am present. I'm at my home in a room by myself.
Councillor Grady Sexton.
I am present and I am home with my family.
Councillor Hatfield.
I'm here in my office by myself.
Councillor Keach.
Home, alone, by myself.
Councillor Kempson.
Present, home alone.
Councillor Kretovic.
Present in a room by myself, though people could pass in the house at any time.
Councillor Robinson.
Home, and I am alone in this room.
Councillor Nyan.
Present, home, alone.
Councillor Pierce.
Present, home, alone.
Councillor Rice Hawkins.
Present, alone in this room in my house.
Councillor Todd.
Here at home, alone in this room.
And Councillor Warner.
I'm here alone in this room.
Wonderful. It's good to see you all. At this time, if you could all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. You could all take your mutes off. That would be up. I don't want to be out there by myself. Okay. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and
to the republic
Which it
stands one nation,
under
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
we are getting better every time. Could I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes for January 11th, 2021?
So moved.
approval.
Motion made and second to approve the minutes. Is there any changes? Comments? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion that's been seconded. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Councillor Bouchard.
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Counselor Champlin,
Yes.
Counselor Fennessy,
Yes.
Counselor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Counselor Hatfield,
Yes.
Counselor Keach,
Yes.
Counselor Kennison,
Yes.
Counselor Kretovic,
Yes.
Counselor Matson,
Yes.
Counselor Nyan,
Yes.
Counselor Pierce,
Yes.
Counselor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Counselor Todd,
Yes.
and Counselor Werner.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. With that, the minutes for January 11th are adopted. Before I recognize our city solicitor, Mr. Kennedy, I just want to apologize for having my camera off when I was reading the introduction. Still getting the technology down. Sorry about that. So now I would like to introduce, recognize Mr. Kennedy, our city solicitor, for some introductions.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of the council. I'm happy to introduce two assistant city prosecutors that were hired and brought into the city within the past month. We have Assistant City Prosecutor Jesse Reynolds Smith, who previously worked for the town of Tilton for several years and actually worked for us while he was in law school as well. So he's got several years experience being a assistant or being a prosecutor, and we're very to have him working in a capacity as assistant city prosecutor. Your Honor, he's marked as an attendee, and if he could just come in for a moment to introduce themselves to the council and the community, a few words, that'd be great. Jesse Reynolds Smith, he should be on the attendee list.
Good evening, welcome.
Thank you. I'm not sure, can the counselors hear me?
We sure can.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. I'm not sure if you can see me. I don't see myself on the screen at all. So I apologize for that. But like Attorney Kennedy has said, I am very excited to be here in the city as an assistant city prosecutor. When I was in law school, I actually interned in this office for just under 2 years with Attorney Connolly, and I got to know her well. I also implemented a lot of her practices in my own office after graduating law school. I negotiated a position with Tilton Police Department and became their prosecutor, as well as for the town of Samberton, New Hampshire. And I've done that for almost the last 5 years before coming down here. This year would have been my 5th year in that capacity. And prior to that, I actually was a police officer. I started my career in 2008. That was up in Plymouth, New Hampshire, specifically at the Plymouth State University Police Department. And then I got hired by the town of Tilton in 2011. So I was with the town of Tilton for March would have been a decade, but I missed that by 1 month because I found out about this position here in Concord, and since my internship, I really have been keeping an eye on this office because I knew that I wanted to come back down here. So I'm very excited. Last week was my first week in the office, and I jumped right in, took on some cases, had some overnights, did bail hearings, had an emergency overnight juvenile hearing, and it's been a ton of fun. Like I said, I'm just so elated to be back in the city. And I guess on a more personal note, I am from Ware, New Hampshire, so I live just outside of the city. I live with my spouse and our 3-year-old daughter. So that keeps me very busy outside of work. We have a ton of fun. I enjoy hiking the New Hampshire 4,000 footers, as well as spending time on the lakes in the summertime. We go boating quite often, and my daughter Haley loves that. As a matter of fact, we haven't been on vacation in a while, so she keeps telling me, Dada, I want to go on an airplane and put my feet in a pool. So she too is looking forward to getting back to getting into the water, as am I. Thank you very much to all of the counselors for taking time out of your busy schedules to have this introduction and come to know us assistant city prosecutors. as I said before, I'm very excited to be in this position, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Do you have any questions? Seeing none, let me just say welcome. Welcome back home, if you will.
Thank
And,
you.
we are thrilled to have you, and you work with an incredibly professional staff, and we are lucky to have you all. So
Thank you very much.
I hope I never see you professionally.
Thank you very much, Jesse.
Mr. Kennedy.
Yes, and we actually hired another assistant city prosecutor around the same time as Mr. Ronald Smith, and that's Jim Seaman. He comes from many years of legal experience, both in the private sector and the public sector as a prosecutor. Most recently, he comes from Hillsborough North, right out of Manchester. And let's bring him in, and I'm very excited for you all to know Jim Seaman as well, our assistant city prosecutor.
Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Manager, and councilors. Thank you very much. I echo many of the same words that both Jim has told you, as well as my colleague, Jesse. I'm very proud to be part of the City of Concord team. My wife and I live in the current urban metroplex of Bow, just down the road, and it doesn't hurt that we're prosecuting cases for my town as well. I took the scenic route in life. I went to Cornell Law School. I was a rescue helicopter pilot for many years with the Coast Guard. I started at Divine Willamette and Branch defending police officers who were sued in civil rights cases. None of them were Concord PD, I assure you. And became a prosecutor at the Merrimack County Attorney's Office before the U.S. Coast Guard recalled me involuntarily to active duty, where I served as both a pilot and a lawyer for the Coast Guard. When I finally got the right to make my selection in life, I chose to come back to New Hampshire. I worked over in Cheshire County and in Hillsborough County, but I always wanted to be back home, which is why my wife and I chose to live in Merrimack County. And I'm very proud to be part of the team that Jim and Tracy Connolly have assembled. And I'll do my utmost for you and the citizens of Concord, as well as Bow, Loudon, and Dumbarton.
Great. Well, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Jim? So none. Again, I'd like to truly welcome you to our city family. It's great to have you, and you are always welcome to move to Concord from Bow. We'd love to have you. The water and the air is a little cleaner and fresher here in Concord, so you're always welcome. Yeah, I see you, man.
I thank you for the kind invitations.
So, but you have the opportunity to work with an incredibly wonderful staff and a group of attorneys and folks. So, welcome. We do have one person, Mr. Champlin, Council Champlin, would like to ask you a question.
Yes.
Thanks, Your Honor. My hand's tired. Jim, welcome. Did you go to the Academy in New London?
I did. It's probably untoward to tell you when I graduated, but it was some time ago. But yes, I'm an Academy graduate.
I have a nephew who's an Academy graduate, and he and his wife, who transferred over from the Navy, are both rescue pilots in the Pacific Northwest. So thank you so much for that really important duty.
Well, you're welcome, and I'm proud of your relatives for doing the same duty. It's both an honor and it can be a little scary at times, but we're well trained, and I'm glad to bring some of that here to Concord.
All right. Well, welcome. Thank you, Your Honor.
Absolutely. So with that, thank you again. And Mr. Kennedy, do you have anything else you'd like to share?
No, just that we're really looking forward to our team, and if anybody has any questions or they want to go and set up a meeting with or see the facility that the prosecutors use, feel free to contact me and or Tracy, and we'd be happy to answer any questions or anything that the council may have going forward.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Mr. Manager, we are now up to item 8, which is an update from Concord TV. Who do we have here to present?
We'll want to bring in Josh Hardy.
Okay, can everybody hear me? This is Josh.
Good evening and welcome, Mr. Hardy. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Good evening. And I appreciate having a couple minutes just to update everybody. It's amazing how time has flown and gone by. I think I spoke with the council around this time last year. It may have been March. I can't recall exactly. But I just wanted to say first off how proud I am of my staff and board of directors with how adaptive they have been during really difficult times. In fact, at this moment, our IT director, Michael, control room, making sure that this meeting gets onto YouTube. And a lot of times the behind the scenes work doesn't get appreciated, but it's certainly gone a long way. I hope everybody received our annual report that we sent out at the end of 2020. And if not, let me know and I can make sure you get a copy because we really upped the amount of production and the amount of content that we've been creating, all local, all Concord-based content for Concord residents. Especially during the pandemic, we've created videos with the Concord School District with updates and how they were dealing with kind of back and forth between remote and hybrid and with all of that. And city videos have never been more popular. Again, thanks in great part to Mike O'Mara and Stephanie Breton, the PIO of City of Concord. And of note, actually, we just noticed a video of Old North Cemetery, a historic tour video. It has over 7,000 views on YouTube, which is pretty incredible. I guess maybe there's a possible tourist bounce that might come from something like that. People who enjoy the history of those types of videos. Concord TV also did a great job, again, thanks to our staff, of pivoting to creating virtual content with our public access producers. We completely closed down our studio to in-person access for public safety reasons. And we offered the opportunity to provide technical support over Zoom or other similar video chat platforms for virtual interviews, much like we're doing a virtual meeting tonight. And so we just had to adapt to that very quickly. And another way was offering a virtual summer camp. Normally through Concord Parks and Rec, we do 4 weeks of in-person camps. Instead, we offered a virtual free program for families. And we had a couple families take advantage of that opportunity, which was great. So I would just encourage everyone to, if you haven't had a chance to take a look at our YouTube page to see what Concord TV has been creating. Again, it's all local and we've really been thriving creating that content. Another series just worth mentioning is through the Tufts Momentum Fund grant that we received, we created a series called Let's Go, which encourages activities around Concord that are safe, socially distant, and encourage people to explore Concord and all the great things to do. A couple topics were White Park, where Parks and Rec collaborated with us on that one. A video about the Kimball Jenkins estate and the Franklin Pierce Manse. And so that's a fantastic series. We've also partnered with the Walker Lecture Series, which you all are familiar with, which provides free entertainment. We've recorded socially distant with them that we are then able to post for people to enjoy. And we have 4 more of those coming up in March. So that's just a few of the things, and I'd be happy to answer questions about content. The other thing that I just wanted to mention, which is very important for kind of our structure and our model of Concord TV, is the 3-way contract between Concord TV, Concord School District, and City of Concord expires in the fall of this year. And based on the contract, we're in the open renewal process at this point. Based on the 2016 timeline, typically discussions were held in back in May of 2016. But we've already had brief discussions. I've notified Superintendent Murphy and had conversations with City Manager Espel, and we're talking later this week, actually. So this is the perfect time to just start the discussions and everyone's aware of it. I know it's a busy time of year for the city and for the school district. But by the time we get to May, that's when all 3 parties should get together and have those serious discussions. And as Mayor Boulay has mentioned before, just being able to have consistency and not have to keep coming back to the table year after year when it comes to funding, that's important. And our board recognizes that and has been brainstorming. So again, I'm appreciative. I have a board of directors who is attentive, they care, and they've been putting together some thoughts on all of that. So just wanted to make everyone aware of that as well. As always, Concord TV is here for the city of Concord, for the community in general. If there's anything we can do, it's very easy to get a hold of me, and we're always looking for new ideas. So happy to partner with you, and again, thank you to my staff and board. Can't say that enough. Are there any questions or points of clarification?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. Does anyone, we do. Councilor Hatfield has a question for you.
Thank you. It's not a question. I actually just wanted to thank you, Josh, for your great work. And thank you so much for highlighting so many of the gems of Ward 4. I unfortunately wasn't able to do the last tour of the Old North Cemetery, and the video is fabulous. So thank you so much for providing those great pieces. Really appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Rice-Hawkins, please.
I just wanted to congratulate Josh. For those who don't know, he was actually selected as a Union Leader 40 Under 40 recipient this year for his great work with Concord TV and for the community. So congratulations on that honor.
Yes, thank you very much. And Councilor Fennessy as well, 40 Under 40 as well. So thank you. I think it's more reflective of just being in a supportive community that's allowed me to learn and to grow. And I certainly have a lot more to learn. And I'm just excited to be in just a great community. So thank you.
Great, thank you. It just made me reflect on how many years ago I was in that list. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, you could still be 40 Under 40. Come on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wow. You should try that at budget time. You might be successful. That was good.
Keep that in mind. Yeah.
Okay. Who else do we have? Anyone else? All right. Seeing none, Mr. Hardy, thank you very much. I really do appreciate spending a little time with us tonight. Appreciate all that you do for the city. So many people have, communicated to myself, as well as I know many of the other councilors, and how important what you do and the service you provide to the city. And it's particularly with COVID and more people are being at home, what you do has become even more important. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks.
Okay, so with that brings us to our consent agenda items. I have not been notified of any consent agenda items that have been removed. Is that correct?
That is correct. Nothing's been removed.
Could we get a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the consent agenda with nothing being removed. Seeing no discussion, Madam Clerk, would you be so kind to call the roll, please?
Yes. Councilor Bouchard.
Yes.
Mayor Boulay.
Yes.
Councilor Champlin.
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy.
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilor Keach.
Yes, and for the record, I'm 50 over 50.
Goodness.
Councilor Kennison.
Councilor Kennison?
Councilor Kennison. We'll come back to her. Councilor Krenwick.
Yes, and I'm 25 going on 25 again.
Councilor Mattson.
Yes.
Councilor Nyan.
Yes.
Councilor Kennison.
Yes.
Councilor Pierce.
Yes.
Councilor Rice-Hawkins.
Yes.
Councilor Todd.
Yes.
And Councilor Werner.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, the motion is adopted and the consent agenda is approved. I would just simply note that when you look at the consent agenda, you'll notice the items that are tabled for public hearings next month. We're going to be here a while, so make sure you get a good nutritious meal beforehand, because I suspect the hearings will last a while. That takes us to our public hearings this evening. Madam Clerk, if you could read item 27A, please.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title 5 Administrative Code, Chapter 30 Administrative Code, Article 30-3 Boards and Commissions, the Planning Board.
Thank you very much. Mr. Manager.
Your Honor, members of the council, the City of Concord Planning Board membership consists of 9 members, which is required to meet the statutory requirements set forth in RSA 673-2. The city's Code of Ordinances 30-3-6 currently allows the appointment of 2 alternate members. The Code of Ordinances is silent regarding the appointment of a city council alternate member. Although this is consistent with RSA 673-6-3, such an appointment is not specifically referenced in the Code of Ordinances. To avoid any confusion and to make the city solicitor comfortable, he recommends that the city council amend the Code of Ordinances, which is you have in front of you, to reflect the city's practice in accordance with RSA 673-6-3. Glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for the manager? Seeing none, at this time, we'll open up the public hearing on item 27A. Seeing no attendees with their hand raised, Mr. Manager, do you have anyone on the phone?
No, we do not.
Okay, then we'll close the public hearing. And Madam Clerk, if you could read item 27B, please.
Yes, it's a resolution authorizing the annual appraisal of real estate at market value per RSA 75:8B.
Mr. Manager?
Your Honor, and members of the council, the city council has voted to authorize the annual evaluation of assessments every year since 2005. We've been doing them annually at market value since 2004. I recommend that you continue to proceed with this practice.
Thank you. Any question from the manager? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Does anyone wish to testify? Seeing none of the attendees with their hand raised, Mr. Manager, is anyone on the phone?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, with that, we'll recess this hearing and we will continue the public hearing in March. Madam Clerk, if you could read item 27C, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $980,000 as a transfer to reserves and authorizing the use of $980,000 from fiscal year 2020 general fund assigned fund balance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Your Honor, members of the council, Deputy City Manager LeBrun will present this item and the next one.
Good evening. Welcome, Mr. LeBrun.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. I am glad to report that this report covers both items 27C and 27D. I am glad to report that the city had a surplus, a general fund surplus at the end of fiscal year 2020, which ended on June 30th, of $1,067,000. We also allocated $1,280,000 to the assigned fund balance. That includes the $980,000 that's in the resolution attached to this item, as well as $300,000 in the assigned fund balance for future abatements and overlay, if that is needed, and that would have to be a separate action by council at a future date if that occurs. Overall revenues for the city, we were short of budget by $234,000, but that also includes the budgetary use of fund balance of $1,128,000 that is not booked in the revenue lines. We also received $872,118 as funding for a variety of issues, COVID-related issues. We received $54,000 from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, $31,700 from the United States Department of Justice, $60,300 from the Department of Health and Human Services, and $725,600 from the Governor's Office for Emergency Relief and Recovery Funding. So that is all included in that revenue item that I just explained a moment ago. Expenses were under budget by $1,300,000. The combination of the revenue being short of budget and expenses being under budget produced the surplus of $1,067,000. This resolution item for $980,000 includes an item or items for highway paving reserve, $400,000, equipment reserve, $330,000, and recreation reserve, $250,000. That makes up the $980,000 in the resolution. And again, if the $300,000 is needed for overlay, that would be a separate item or separate action by council at a later time. The next agenda item is for $79,700 appropriation. This is the same that we do typically every year as well. We would request $49,700 from the equipment reserve. And all for furniture and fixtures for IT camera maintenance, and also for the citizen tracker software, and also $30,000 for education from the education reserve account for training opportunities throughout the remainder of the year. As you know, we didn't appropriate any funds for any training or education during fiscal year 2021 budget. We also had the enterprise funds that we're reporting on. We have several special revenue funds and a couple of enterprise funds. The inspection fund actually showed a loss of $5,000. That is $9,400 short of what the budget was. You did receive a supplemental resolution on this earlier this year in order to increase the actual budget amount on that fund. The parking fund showed an actual loss of $58,000. That was short of budget by $183,000. We projected a gain of $124,000 in that fund. The airport fund showed an actual loss of $32,000. We had projected a loss of $82,000, so that was $49,000 better than projection. The golf fund phenomenally did much better than was anticipated. The revised budget was zero, and we showed a gain of $2,005. The arena fund anticipated a gain of $18,000. They showed a loss of $39,000. That was $58,000 worse. The solid waste fund expected a loss of $80,000. There was a gain of $173,000, so that was $250,000 better than expected. The water fund, the first of our two enterprise funds, expected a loss of $55,000. We had a gain of $272,000. That was $328,000 better than what was expected. And the wastewater fund, the second enterprise fund, expected a loss of $889,000. The loss was $365,000. So that was $523,000 better than anticipated. Considering what we went through with the pandemic and all the issues that we were dealing with throughout the end of fiscal year 2020, I think these results really are much better than what we had originally anticipated. And I think this report reflects that. And just looking forward to the City Council taking action on these two resolution items, 27C and 27D, for public hearing and then action. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. LeBrun?
I have a quick question, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Pierce.
Thank you very much for the report. But for those keeping score at home, we actually don't have a citizen tracker software. It's the citizen request tracker software. That's where we report on the city website. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, it is. My apologies for.
That's okay. My ears perked up.
No problem.
Thank you. Just for clarification.
Anyone else? Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I had a question.
Councilor Hampton.
Thank you. Mr. LeBrun, then you mentioned, and I'm sorry, I can't find it in the report. So your recommendation for the $980,000 is to go in 3 different funds. The last one was the recreation. What were the other 2?
The equipment reserve and the highway paving reserve. So there's $400,000 to the highway paving reserve, and that's used as part of the overall paving, capital paving program each year when we do the budget. The equipment reserve, $330,000. That's for any equipment purchases that we use when we do the capital budget, and $30,000 of that is recommended to be appropriated in that $79,000. And then the recreation reserve that you mentioned for $250,000, and we use that to offset the capital or the debt service costs and operating costs since the new community center was built, trying to wean our way off of the additional expenses as time goes on.
Follow up?
Please.
And in your judgment, those were the three funds that you thought were the most appropriate and the most in need of the 980,000.
Yeah, these are the ones that we've been working with for a number of years. They help offset some of these situations that arise when we're going to be working on the fiscal year 2022 budget, both capital and operating. So in order to, it's kind of like advanced planning to try to help out so that we don't hit the tax rate. You know, imagine every $430,000 is an extra point on the tax rate. So if we're able to use $400,000 or $800,000, we can help offset some of that tax rate increase.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Seeing no one else, then at this time we'll open the public hearing. Anyone who wishes to testify, raise your hand or *9. Seeing no one raising their hand for attendees, Mr. Manager, do you have anyone on the phone?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, well, thank you very much. At this time, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, if you could read item 27D, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $79,700 for furniture, equipment, and software maintenance, and authorizing the use of $79,700 in reserve funds for these purposes.
Thank you very much. I believe we've already received the report on that one. So at this time, we'll open the public hearing. If anyone's wishing to testify on item 27D, please indicate by raising your hand. Seeing no hand raises, do we have it on the phone, Mr. Manager?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, then with that, then we will close the hearing on item 27D. And Madam Clerk, would you be so kind as to read item 27E, please?
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $75,000 as a transfer to the Recreation Reserve and accepting the sum of $75,000 from the sale of the former East Concord Community Center located at 18 Eastman Street in Concord.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Honored members of the council, given that this property was previously used as a community center, as a recreational purpose, city administration recommends that the revenues derived from the sale be deposited into the Recreation Reserve Fund. Recreation Reserve Fund is used to finance investments in the repair, renovation, construction, and operations of recreational facilities in the city, which includes the city-wide community center. Glad to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Manager, I thought it was a fire department. Okay, seeing no questions, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing the attendees to participate? Seeing none, Mr. Manager, do we have anyone on the phone?
No, Your Honor.
And with that, we will close the public hearing on item 27E. And Madam Clerk, if you could read item 27F, please.
Yes, it's a resolution appropriating the sum of $10,000 for replacement of the Green Street Community Center exterior doors, CIP number 63, and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the sum of $10,000 for this purpose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, these doors that they're in place now were adequate when it was simply being used as a community center. And the building is being used a lot more now, and the doors are in need of repair. The replacement doors will be more robust than the existing doors and be able to handle the additional security needs. And the doors will be code compliant with respect to crash bars and power assist on opening. And this is one of the items that was in the budget that we decided to hold off to determine how well the budget was going to do this fiscal year. Given the relative strength of the budget right now, we're recommending you move forward with spending this $10,000 to repair those doors, replace those doors.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the manager? Okay, seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on this item. Is there anyone wishing to testify?
No calls, Your Honor.
No calls, and seeing no one on the attendees list looking to testify, then at this time we'll close the public hearing and we'll move on to item 27G. Madam Clerk.
It's a resolution authorizing the city manager to host an ICMA Local Government Management Fellowship, appropriating $20,000 to fund said fellowship for the remainder of fiscal year 2021, and authorizing the use of $20,000 in Economic Development Reserve funds for this purpose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, the city currently uses a team approach to carry out community economic development policies, programs, projects, and initiatives. That includes my position, city manager's position, deputy city manager for development, the director of redevelopment, downtown services and special projects, the economic development director's position, and the public information officer. In recognition of the city's economic development strategy will likely remain project centered for the foreseeable future, coupled with a number of current anticipated future economic development projects on the horizon, as well as existing staff skill sets and workloads, proposing to reorganize the city's economic development resources to improve delivery of the critical services to the community. Specifically, subject to City Council acceptance of this report and approval of the resolution, I intend to commence this process immediately. Some actions will be initiated in January through March, or obviously January was the submittal of the proposal. Other components will be addressed in the spring as part of the FY22 budget adoption process. Key components include implementation of an economic development project manager fellowship. The purpose of this position shall be to assist Mr. Walsh with his duties, in particular emphasis on administration of economic development and parking related capital projects. The position will also assist Mr. Bahia with economic development initiatives as needed. Specific job responsibilities shall be loosely based on the community development project manager position, which is actually a position I created back in 2001. The position will also begin to create a certain level of redundancy for Mr. Walsh's critical position, which is increasingly essential to ensure continuity of operations and to allow for even greater successes. In recognition of the current labor market and desire to streamline the recruitment process to onboard the position as soon as possible while simultaneously controlling costs, I'm proposing the position be initially staffed by an International City and County Management Association Local Government Management Fellow. As you know, the Economic Development Director position was established as an effort to gauge if this initiative could provide sufficient returns in terms of tax-based generation to warrant the position's funding. In fact, the concern was raised during the City Council's review of the Community Development Department's fiscal year 20 budget. It's now nearly 4 years since the position was created. The levels of tax return attributable to the position have unfortunately not supported the city's investment. This despite Ms. Pegg's dedication and effort, which have been strong throughout the entire period. Given the city's economic development activities will remain project-centered for the foreseeable future, subject to City Council approval, I intend to eliminate the position of Economic Development Director position as part of the fiscal year 22 budget. Specifically, the position will be eliminated effective July 1. I'm recommending that this course of action, as I do not believe the position requires a full-time staff person. Lastly, over the next few months, I intend to develop a formal proposal to the City Council, which will be included in the City Administration's recommended fiscal year 22 budget concerning additional elements of the reorganization plan. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. We have Councilor Fennessy has a question.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. This is for the city manager. In looking at the report, you indicated that many of the fellows start applying in January and February, and that the best candidates are placed pretty quickly. Are you comfortable that we're going to be able to get our process out there in a timely enough manner that we can still attract the best candidates?
Yes, Councilor. As a matter of fact, we did put the anticipating that you would approve this. If not, then we could simply withdraw. We contacted International City Managers and County Managers Association, started the process. As a matter of fact, I have 30 applications on my desk that I started reviewing today. So I think and these are all around the country, and I haven't seen anybody international yet, but these are people from all around the country who have expressed an interest in this type of job. What we're trying to do is go through those, Mr. Bahia and I, to determine whether or not someone matches up with the economic development flavor that we're looking for. And then we're going to see if we can actually attract that person to come and work with us. So we're already well underway, but I can pull the plug if the council decides not to move forward.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, at this time, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to testify? See no one in the attendees, Mr. Manager? Anyone on the phone?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing. It takes us to our hearing phase of the public after these for these items, the action phase. I'm sorry. We have Madam Clerk, item 28, please.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title 5, Administrative Code, Chapter 30, Administrative Code, Article 30-3, Boards and Commissions, the Planning Board.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Councilor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councilor Champlin,
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilor Keach,
Yes.
Councilor Kennison,
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councilor Mattson,
Yes.
Councilor Nyan,
Yes.
Councilor Pierce,
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councilor Todd,
Yes.
and Councilor Werner.
Yes.
With that, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, if I could ask you to read item 30, please.
Yes, it's a resolution appropriating the sum of $980,000 as a transfer to reserves and authorizing the use of $980,000 from fiscal year 2020 general fund assigned fund balance.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. We have a motion that's made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we're ready for the vote. Madam Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Councilor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councilor Champlin,
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilor Keach, Councilor Keach,
Yes.
Councilor Kennison,
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councilor Mattson,
Yes.
Councilor Nyan,
Yes.
Councilor Pierce,
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councilor Todd,
Yes.
and Councilor Werner.
Yes.
Having received the necessary 2/3, the motion is approved. Madam Clerk, item 31, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $79,700 for furniture, equipment, and software maintenance and authorizing the use of $79,700 in reserve funds for this purpose.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and motion been seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Councilor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councilor Champlin,
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilor Keach,
Yes.
Councilor Kennison, Councilor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councilor Mattson,
Yes.
Councilor Nyan,
Yes.
Councilor Pierce,
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councilor Todd,
Yes.
and Councilor Werner.
Yes.
With that, is received the necessary 2/3 and the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, next item.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $75,000 as a transfer to the Recreation Reserve and accepting the sum of $75,000 from the sale of the former East Concord Community Center located at 18 Eastman Street in Concord.
Thank you very
Move
much.
approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Councilor Kretovic.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. City Manager, a couple weeks ago, I sent an email to our Recreation Director, Mr. Gill, with regards to a historic sign that was on the outside of the building at the request of the Heritage Commission, because a local resident had mentioned that the sign had been taken off the building. And so in follow-up, my understanding is that the sign was turned over to the city because it was a historic sign and wasn't going to be of any purpose to the new owners. There was a follow-up question that came to the Heritage Commission with regards to the weather vane that's at the top of the building, which was part of the building, I suppose, when it was a firehouse. Do we know if that's going to be returned to the city as well, or was it part of the sale?
I don't know, but I can find out. I think it would be part of the sale unless it was called out as part of it. And but I can check with Mr. Walsh.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, seeing none. Madam Clerk?
Councillor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councillor Champlin,
Yes.
Councillor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councillor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councillor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councillor Keach,
Yes.
Councillor Kennison,
Yes.
Councillor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councillor Mattson,
Yes.
Councillor Nyan,
Yes.
Councillor Pierce,
Yes.
Councillor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councillor Todd,
Yes.
and Councillor Werner.
Yes.
Having received the necessary 2/3, motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 33, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $10,000 for replacement of the Green Street Community Center exterior doors, CIP number 63, and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the sum of $10,000 for this purpose.
Thank you.
Move approval?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, if you call the roll.
Councillor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councillor Champlin,
Yes.
Councillor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councillor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councillor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councillor Keach,
Yes.
Councillor Kennison,
Yes.
Councillor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councillor Mattson,
Yes.
Councillor Nyan,
Yes.
Councillor Pierce,
Yes.
Councillor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councillor Todd,
Yes.
and Councillor Werner.
Yes.
And with that, we've received the necessary 2/3 and the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, I believe we're on the last one, item 34.
Yes, it's a resolution authorizing the city manager to host an ICMA Local Government Management Fellowship, appropriating $20,000 to fund said fellowship for the remainder of fiscal year 2021, and authorizing the use of $20,000 in economic development reserve funds for this purpose.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Councilor Champlin.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to make a comment and applaud the city manager's focus on economic development and the restructuring that he's proposed. That is part of this item of business. I think that's economic development is going to become even more critical as we come out of the COVID-19 pandemic. So again, I applaud the city manager's forethought and laser focus on this issue. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, seeing none. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Councillor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councillor Champlin,
Yes.
Councillor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councillor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councillor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councillor Keach,
Yes.
Councillor Kennison,
Yes.
Councillor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councillor Mattson,
Yes.
Councillor Nyan,
Yes.
Councillor Pierce,
Yes.
Councillor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councillor Todd,
Yes.
and Councilor Werner.
Yes.
Having received the necessary 2/3, the motion is adopted. Takes us to our reports, which we have one report from the Concord Municipal Airport Terminal Area Study presentation. Mr. Manager.
Your Honor, members of the council will bring in the consultant to have that discussion, and Deputy City Manager Bahia is, as you know, in charge of the airport.
Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of council. So Heath Marsden with Jacobs Engineering should be on the call right now, and we'll be making a very brief presentation. This was an exciting project for the airport and the Airport Advisory Committee. I know Councilor Bouchard and Councilor Mattson are in the meeting and can speak to it as well. I think there's a great project here, and we're hoping to just get the council's interest, and hopefully we'll be back to you at some future CIP hearing on this same subject.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Concord Airport Terminal Study to you tonight. Can everybody see my screen?
We sure can.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So I'm Heath Marsden. I'm the project manager for this project. I will be as brief as possible. There's only 14 slides to go through, so bear with me. I'll go very fast. So our study started by assembling members of a design working group. That was made up of representatives from city planning, economic development, members of the Airport Advisory Committee, Fish and Game, New Hampshire Bureau of Aeronautics, the Airport FBO, the Fixed Base Operator, Concord Aviation, a representative from the Regional Planning Commission, as well as the Deputy City Manager and the Associate City Engineer. Once that group was assembled, we had conducted an inventory of the existing terminal building. And from that inventory, it was pretty clear, basically from the outset, that the current building does not meet the needs of a modern day terminal building. It also had environmental issues, that being the presence of asbestos and lead, as well as it did not meet our current code compliance for building code or ADA compliance. We held a series of workshops with members of the design working group. And within those workshops, we made several refinements to a conceptual plans. And at the end of that, we have a final recommended terminal design, which I'll get to in a couple minutes here. So at the outset of the design working group, we wanted to start to formulate the discussion. And that was really centered around several design themes. So the terminal building, and there's actually two separate areas of this terminal study. We'll focus on the terminal building primarily, but a new terminal building had to fit the image that we wanted to portray for the city of Concord, it being the first in the nation primary. We wanted to make sure that we conveyed the local and regional aspect, Concord being obviously the state capital, and we wanted to represent New Hampshire culture. Of course, the building has to function both as a terminal building and as the face of Concord. So folks that are arriving by air, it is the first impression of the city of Concord that the terminal building provides. We wanted to make sure that it had a level of flexibility and expandability. And of course, it's representing your community. So the airport is the gateway, the aviation gateway to the city of Concord. We wanted to make sure that it was an anchor point for that intersection of Regional Drive, Airport Road, and Old Turnpike Road, and dress up that corner there. And the building had to be sustainable, both in terms of environmental sustainability as well as financial and economic sustainability. So our study area is shown here. If you can follow my cursor, it's going to start up here in the green. Our study encompassed this entire terminal area here that runs basically north to south or south to north along Airport Road here. So this is the main terminal area, which houses the terminal building, of course, the airport's fixed base operator, and several hangars. And then there was a large empty space down here that we'd looked at potential opportunities with. Some of the criteria that we were held to and some of the restraints were by the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. There are numerous airspace surfaces and airport geometry that we need to make sure that we don't encroach upon. That is the airspace off the end of both of these runways here, which is the runway protection zone. Only certain building opportunities are allowed in there. And then we have the airport geometry. So we have to make sure that any proposed building is free of taxi lane, object-free areas, and building restriction lines. Again, that all has to do with airspace and maintaining a safe airport and distances from aircraft operating areas. So this is what we ended up with, a proposed site plan. The existing airport business, the FBO, fixed base operator, is right here. The current terminal building lies in this area here. And one of the things that came out of the design working group is that the airport terminal should really serve as an anchor point as people approach the airport from the runway and the aircraft aprons, which are primarily up here. Right now, the existing terminal building in this orientation is not really within the line of sight from an aircraft that is coming off the runway into the terminal area here. So by moving the terminal building and rotating it in this orientation here, that actually allowed us to put an additional hangar spot here. And that hangar spot relates to additional revenue for the city of Concord, both in terms of either a building lease or tenant space. If you have an aircraft base there, it also would increase operations and fuel sales for the airport, which again turns into secondary business being conducted in the city of Concord. We had conducted several case studies of airports that have similar sized terminal buildings. Those are general aviation airports, and by general aviation airport, I mean an airport that does not have scheduled airline service, which Concord Airport does not. It's considered a general aviation airport. What we found that those buildings within the case study they were all approximately 5,000 square feet in size. So when we were developing site plans and the spatial layouts for the Concord Airport terminal, we were going towards a building size similarly to accommodate approximately 5,000 square feet. When designing a terminal building for spatial needs, one of the key aspects is providing tenant space that can be leased out, as well as functional airport administrative space. So in here, this building provides adequate administration space for the airport manager's office. And then we have several tenant areas that the city can lease out to prospective tenants. This is just office space here. This space was sized primarily geared towards attracting a smaller sized restaurant. We also had space for additional expansion. However, the terminal building as presented in this study is within these walls here. This space here and this space here is just potential optional space. We then have space set aside for pilots and crews as restrooms and basically lounge space and pilot planning rooms for weather planning, flight planning. And then we have a large lobby space, which the existing terminal building is very lacking in. So because Concord serves as the entry point for many politicians as they go through the primary, NASCAR was also a big user of the airport. We wanted to provide a space so that when those crews and VIPs come in, they could stage events here. And the wall space, there's adequate wall space here to showcase basically New Hampshire's cultural aspects and historical aspects of Concord. When we had looked at site locations for the building, I had mentioned before that we wanted to present an opportunity for the building to serve as an anchor point for aircraft arriving. So if an aircraft is arriving here from right to left, they would come off this taxiway or one of these midfield taxiways, and the building is basically the first building you see. And as you land to the south and come off one of the taxiways, the building it's quite obvious that that is where arriving passengers and pilots should go to start their entry into the city of Concord. Whereas now the existing terminal building as it sits here is fairly unremarkable. It's not obvious that that is where an arriving pilot or aircrew or passengers should be going as they park and try to get out into the city of Concord. So now for all the pretty pictures and the renderings, this is what was recommended through our architectural team working with the design working group. This is a rendering This is what an arriving air crew and passengers would see as they get out of the airplane. So you can see that there's large open windows here. This would be hopefully a restaurant would go in here. This is tenant space that could be leased out here, in airport management offices and additional tenant space over here. And it has that large entryway / lobby that I spoke of a little bit earlier. This is a rendering from basically the airport parking lot. You can see the aircraft parked on the air side, what we call the air side here, shown with window shades drawn. So there's, even though that there is a lot of glass on the facade of this, it can be, some of the concerns were heating and cooling costs. There are a lot of solutions potentially to deal with large window treatments like this. It has a long, wide sloping roof. Again, this is just another view from the airport parking lot of the corner of the building. And then this would be from the, again, what we call the air side, as a pilot or passenger walking into the building. Again, now this is from the street side. This view would be if you're standing on the north side of Airport Road at the intersection of Regional Drive and Old Turnpike Road. You can see this is where an additional hangar could be erected. This view is standing on Old Turnpike Road, looking towards Regional Drive and Airport Road. And finally, the other half of our study looked at potential options to do some development on the south end of the runway. And what we had come up with is one of the best revenue generators for the airport in the city of Concord is to provide space for private developers to come in and erect aircraft storage hangars. These hangars are sized for basically corporate size aircraft. They're 200 feet by 200 feet. And they have adequate space out front to basically for an aircraft to taxi in, park, and then be pushed back into the hangar. Again, the idea of this is to provide space for aircraft to come in. They will be stored overnight, and it provides conditioned space. Now, these could be either done with a private developer, or the city of Concord come in and manage the space as well, and get overnight parking fees, or just rent them out long term. And that concludes my presentation for tonight. At this point, I could take any questions that might be out there.
Thank you, Mr. Margin. Would you mind bringing us back so we get a full screen?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the overview and all the work that you did. Is there any questions? Looks like you get off easy. Thank you very much. Very, very thorough. I appreciate all the efforts, and I appreciate the group of folks you brought together. That's a good team.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Valle, do you have anything you want to add before we move on?
I do not, Your Honor. Thank you for the time.
All right, great. Well done. That takes us to item 36 under new business. I had a conversation with Councilor Warner about energy legislation and work that the committee has been doing. And since we were more or less at the towards the beginning of the session, I thought it would be handy for Council Warner to kind of go through very briefly. He's agreed to be brief. Some of the energy legislation that was pending for the legislature and how it might affect the city. So at this time, I'd like to recognize Council Warner.
Thank you, Your Honor. If you would refer to the New Hampshire legislation, the 2021 session that's in your packet. The Concord Energy and Environment Advisory Committee at our January 27th meeting, we did review a number of pieces of legislation, and we have put together this list, recommendation from the committee in terms of appropriate relevant legislation that we recommend that the city take a position on, either in opposition or in support of. I would say that you have a number of bills here, but there are bills that particularly rise to the top, both in terms of being negative and a positive. I would say that House Bill 213, which is a matter of fact up for hearing this Friday in House Science, Tech, and Energy, is particularly troublesome because it takes our current renewable portfolio standard and cuts it in half. And it's, for the city point of view, it's really, it undermines and is not consistent with what we've been doing and what we have endorsed as a council in terms of support for renewable energy and our own ambitious goals. House Bill 315. I think many of us are familiar with the community power plan that was signed by the governor in 2019. This bill is somewhat complex, but basically it undermines legislation that was signed by the governor, as I said, in 2019, that provides a lot of flexibility and innovative ways of procuring energy for communities. And there are a number of communities around the state that are interested in this kind of program. I know that the manager has been keeping a particular eye on the city of Lebanon as they continue their work. This bill seems to be somewhat of an anti-competition bill, actually. It is, I think, been described to me as anti-free market in terms of being very controlling around what the energy market and the shape of it can be, which is very different from the original legislation. So we think that this is something to really be concerned about. And I know that the mayor has talked to his colleagues around the state, and I believe that, in fact, I know that there's a shared concern about this bill in terms of allowing communities flexibility and innovation. So that's something that we would recommend not to support. If you go down to the legislation to support, Senate Bill 71 and House Bill 172 are somewhat related in that they support the establishment of a climate action plan and emissions goals that, again, are consistent broadly and generally with the direction that we have endorsed within the city of Concord, and would support and echo what we've been trying to do and a number of other communities around the state are trying to do in terms of getting on that road. House Bill 106, Senate Bill 109 are related. This has to do with what Solicitor Kennedy was talking about in terms of net metering. We know that over the last number of sessions, a large number of communities have come to support expansion of net metering, and net metering in a very broad way. Municipalities, businesses, and so forth. We have heretofore not been successful in that. It's been a very, very bipartisan effort throughout, yet we have not been able to really get this on the books. This year, I really do think that there's a excellent chance that we can make progress on this. And what I mean by that is these bills, particularly Senate Bill 109, introduced by Senator Avard, and House Bill 106, introduced by Representative Lang, take an approach on net metering which would limit it to municipalities, governmental units to be able to do that. And obviously, that would help us a great deal. It would be an opportunity if this were passed and signed by the governor. And by the way, the governor does seem to be supportive of this approach. It would allow us to finally build the kind of large projects that we would like to do very much and have been supportive of. And then the last one is a clean energy procurement bill in the Senate that does not have a number yet. Waters is making an effort to really try to get New Hampshire into the game around clean energy procurement. States around us are really diving deep into that, particularly with offshore wind. And we need to get into the procurement game to really take advantage of that. So I would say that the most important bills right now are House Bill 213, House Bill 315, and the net metering bills. In the past, the city of Concord has sent letters to legislators to be signed by the manager expressing support or opposition of legislation. I would ask that the council authorize the city manager to do that once again with these particular pieces of legislation in mind. But before we go into that discussion, I wanted to see if there's any questions from anyone.
Appreciate the overview. Is anyone have any questions for Council Warner? Okay, seeing none. I think, by the way, you did an excellent job. Really appreciate the preparation beforehand, man. Really easy. Seeing no questions, I appreciate where you're going. I think part of what we should do is not only ask, instead of asking them simply to, I haven't read the language of these bills, so my only reservation is that the manager work with the city solicitor to participate where we should be participating, I guess is where I'm kind of coming from. I guess I'm with you, Council Warner. I just like our solicitor to make sure that he has input with the administration. So that's where my comfort level is, but I'm yield to anyone else who has a better idea.
Your Honor, this is Council 9. I echo your concerns, is making sure the language matches in all the city's best interest.
I would point out a timing situation in terms of two bills that are up for hearing this Friday, House Bill 213, House Bill 315. The net metering bills have not been scheduled for hearing yet, so we will have a little more time. I just wanted to make folks aware of that.
Great. Mr. Spell.
May I suggest that Councilor Warner send me directly the language that he's talking about for the support of those two bills? I'll work with the city solicitor and then tie back to Councilor Warner, and then we're comfortable with it. We'll send it to the legislature, and then I can copy all the members of the city council so you're all aware of what is there, if that would work for Councilor Warner.
That works for me, but I'm going to recognize Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you. I think I'm good with what the city manager proposed. My concern is similar to what's been echoed by the mayor and Councilor Nyan. Obviously, I appreciate the background information from Councilor Warner. I haven't had an opportunity to look at the language, and I am interested in input with respect to particularly which bills have a direct impact on our efforts to increase our renewable portfolio here in the city.
Thank you.
I could answer that really very quickly. You know, the bills that have the most immediate direct impact on Concord in a positive way would be the net metering bills. And in the past, we have supported that concept via letters to the legislature. But that certainly is does rise to the top and being the most direct positive impact to the city and the direction in which we want to head.
Thank you.
Your Honor.
Councilor Hopkins.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Warner, for the work. And I did participate in the Energy and Environment Advisory Committee discussion on this, which was helpful. This is a small number of the many related bills, and I think Councilor Warner has carefully winnowed this down to those that do or that would directly affect the city's efforts. And in addition to how important the net metering bills are to us, and then also the community power bills and RPS, also the efficiency bills, if they passed, would be extremely detrimental to our efforts to save money and to save energy. So for example, the LED project that we just approved, those funding sources are at risk with some of these bills. So I think this is a manageable number of bills, and I would rate them all as very important. And us weighing in, as Councilor Werner has proposed, I think is very consistent with our prior efforts. And I think we'll be in good company with lots of other municipalities weighing in similarly.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share anything? Okay, Councilor Warner, thank you again. I really appreciate your work you did on this. I think you're going to get the answers you need, but we just want to make sure we check all the boxes. And I think, Mr. Manager, you understand the time constraints with Friday's hearing. So, Mr. Councilor Warner, as soon as you get him the information, I suspect you'll get an answer back.
Understood.
Great. Thanks, everybody. So that completes for new business. I did have an item that came up this afternoon that I did not get to communicate with the clerk. I could bring it in under kind of requests and thoughts by counselors, but now might be a better time. So I want to ask for your consideration. Actually, let me back up before I begin. I want to give a special thank you to Councilor Hatfield. Many of others have called me, and we have given some, been very helpful and insightful, trying to move things along. But Councilor Hatfield has done a whole bunch of work that made my life a whole lot easier, and hopefully it will make the councils, the communities, like much easier as well. Councilor Hatfield has been successful in communicating with the National League of Cities on our behalf as a city, and the National League of Cities has a program, and this is really what I've been looking for. It was created, the Race, Equity, and Leadership, which stands for REAL, Department to strengthen local governments and knowledge and capacity to eliminate racial disparities, heal racial divisions, and build more equitable communities, which I think is an excellent start to where we need to be. So one of the things, they offer an extensive program. I think we're more at the beginning stages, quite frankly. And so Real 100 is basically a leadership training series talking about normalizing racial equity in local governments. It's about an 8-hour program. These sessions, they provide introductory overview for city leaders and staff and the history of institutional and structural racism in America. And it goes on to talk about shared language for racial equity, examines existing racial disparities in cities, and it goes on. So I think this, in my search for trying to find kind of the path to moving forward, and with the assistance of Councilor Hatfield, this seems to be a really nice fit for where we are as a community, to start the conversations among us first, so that we get a good foundation for the conversation that needs to take place, and then to then grow from this and expand it into the community. The second phase of it would be talk community conversations with the community leaders. But I think that before we get to those community conversations, we really need to base ourselves. And that's what this does. Now, to do this, there is a price tag to do it. It is probably around the number of about $12,000. And I've asked the manager if he could draft a resolution for a hearing next month that would appropriate those dollars. I've asked him to come from our fund balance. So you won't see that now. You would see that much like what we did with the surplus earlier this evening. You would see that next October or so, and it would be $12,000 or so less than what we anticipated. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that I could, and anything that I cannot, I would gladly yield to Councilor Hatfield. But I think that this will give us an excellent basis for jumping off and then moving forward with more of community conversations. Several of you have contacted me, like Councilor Grady Sexton, offering folks who would like to participate, and I do greatly appreciate when you forward those names and all, but I figured this would be a great foundation for all of us.
Mr. Mayor, when you say, you mean the council being the initial target audience?
The council and staff.
Okay, thank you.
Great idea, Your Honor.
Anyone else?
I would just say that my experience with the National League of Cities is that they always deliver excellent programming. So I'm really happy to see Councilor Hatfield identifying this opportunity.
And Your Honor, I can just share that I learned about this through the New Hampshire Municipal Association. You may know that I serve on their board, and they provided an introductory session with municipal folks from around the Northeast. And I was so impressed by just that first session that I followed up to learn more. And it does seem like a great program. They are working with a couple of other small cities in the Northeast, including Arlington, Massachusetts. And then they're also in discussions with a few smaller communities in Connecticut and Vermont. So they do have some experience in our region.
Thank you. Anyone else? So, Mr. Spell, what do you need to move forward the resolution for next month?
Well, you've given me the dollar figure, and I think I have based on what Councilor Hatfield was saying and what you've said, the background information I need to put together the resolution. I think just for flexibility, if you could, we could also look at any unexpended dollars this year. So, if you wanted to use, the remainder of the fireworks dollars or something like that, I'll look at those and I'll run them by the mayor before we come to the meeting. So that way council has the best options available in terms of the spending, but it's all doable. I'll work with the city clerk and the deputy city manager for finance. Will have this all ready for to have a public hearing on next month.
Okay. Would it be best to have a motion to set this for a public hearing?
Yes, sir.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made, seconded to set this down for a public hearing for next month. Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you. I just had a question with respect to logistics. If we're all participating in a training, is it going to need to be open to the public?
My intention was it would be open to the public, but much like our meetings here, there are participants and there are attendees, and the council and the staff would be the participants.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Great question, by the way. Thank you. Okay, seeing none, then Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Councilor Bouchard.
Yes.
Mayor Boulay.
Yes.
Councilor Champlin.
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy.
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilor Keach.
Yes.
Councilor Kennison. Councilor Kennison.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilor Kretovic.
Yes.
Councilor Matson.
Yes.
Councilor Nyan. Councilor Nyan.
Yes.
Councilor Pierce.
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Yes.
Councilor Todd.
Yes.
And Councilor Warner.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. And with that, the motion is adopted. We have no unfinished business, and that takes us to comments requests by councilors. Anybody have anything they'd like to share? Councilor Kennison.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a question of the city manager. Looking forward to our budget meetings. I'm wondering if we have a sense of what nights of the week we might be scheduling those. My reason for asking is all of my Wednesday nights from now until the end of May are taken. And if we're going to have them on Wednesday night, I need to readjust what I'm doing.
Mr. Manager?
Well, you're in luck, Councilor, because they'll probably be on Mondays and Thursdays. If you follow the same schedule as you have in the past.
Great. Thank you.
Just a heads up, Councilor Fennessy may not like it's being on Thursday night, so you two can duke it out.
Another reason.
Who else has something they'd like to share? Councilor Pierce, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very quickly, Council saw in the paper last week that Camp Spalding is up for sale. It's been listed. Councilors Todd and I met with a group of people that would like to preserve that land and just help guide them through the process. They have sent some letters, sent a letter to the Planning Department and the, Conservation Commission, on which Councilor Todd sits. So you'll be hearing more about that as to whether or not this 57 acres is a good piece of land to conserve. So just to let you know that was going on. So thank you.
So this is a group who'd like the city to purchase it, or this is a group of private citizens who would like to purchase it themselves?
They have not. I mean, I'm sure they would love the city to purchase it. They would like to have the land preserved and conserved watershed. They're making the case to do it. We did not get into who would purchase the land and so on and so forth. It's still very preliminary.
Thank you. Councilor Krivik.
I didn't have any questions at the time, but I did want to thank Councilor Bouchard and Councilor Mattson for all the work that they did with regards to the study for the airport terminal. Sometimes projects come before the city that I'm just absolutely giddy about, and this is something that is long overdue. Well done. I know that it may be some time before we put this in motion, given everything that else that happens in the city, but I did want to congratulate you, the committee, and everybody for all the hard work they did. It really looks like a fantastic project.
Thank you, Councilor.
Appreciate you saying sharing. Councilor Hatfield.
Thank you. I had a couple things. One is I wanted to let folks know, this is wearing my TPAC hat, that there is a public hearing this Thursday at 6 p.m. regarding the I-89 Route 13 intersection at Exit 2 and the proposal to address the traffic concerns there. It's a public meeting by Zoom at 6 p.m. and you can find information on the DOT website. I wanted to thank Mr. Espel for the information he shared with the council regarding training and leadership programs related to diversity, equity, and inclusion that the city is undertaking. And just for the public's benefit, I wondered if he wouldn't mind just briefly speaking to those, because I think I'm very happy to hear of his leadership on these issues and things that are going on within city departments. So I didn't know if he could just speak to that briefly.
Certainly. We had a training class, I'm going to say about 2 weeks ago, for all the supervisors. We did it by, not by department, more by functional use. So general services had a group, Parks and Recreation had a group, general managers, and we had a actually quite a long period of training for inclusion and diversity and understanding race issues. So that it went very well received. We also did it for the fire department and police department, and it's one of those subjects where it's very hard to, as you know, it's very hard to participate in something like that. For some people new to the Zoom platform, you all now have become relative experts in doing this, but for other folks, being part of this with that and being new to it or don't use it on a regular basis, it was kind of a challenge at the beginning. So we're going to keep at it. We've also started, since Councilor Hatfield brought the point up, the HR director and I are also taking a 5-week class on the same issue, same issues, I should say. And that's I think it's a 10-hour class on inclusion and diversity and race relations. So it's there's so much to learn. There's so much that's going on, and it's something that I feel it's, and this is, and I think the same approach the mayor's taking, which is we need to understand the issues that are out there and some of the topic matter before we can even expect city staff all the way down through the organizations and all the boards and all the committees and all the volunteers to be educated enough to deal with these items properly. So it's actually quite interesting. It's a lot of fun, and there's so much to learn. So thank you for asking.
Well, thank you so much for your leadership. I know it's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Councilor Campson.
Thank you, Your Honor. In the same vein, I'm really pleased to see that so much is going on, and I just want to explain my Wednesday nights that I'm busy. We meet twice a week with a South Church anti-racist committee, and I'm also facilitating a book study on anti-racism. And we've been doing this for a while, and we've learned so much, and we're now moving into what we call an action phase, which I hope that the city will get to eventually, more of an action. So just wanted to let you know that's going on, and a lot of other things around racism.
Thank you. Councilor Hatfield, did you have something further? I apologize.
I did. I'm sorry. I was wondering, I had two things. Wondering if Councilor Champlin had any updates on his work on homelessness, and also wondering if there was any update on the winter farmers market progress.
You want me to take that first, Your Honor?
Oh, please.
Well, Councilor Hatfield, thank you for asking about it. This is a tough time for the homeless population, obviously, with the weather that we've had. I think most people know that the homeless, the emergency winter shelter behind the Homeless Resource Center on North Main Street was designed to hold 40 people. And under the social distancing guidelines from the CDC, that number was cut in half to 20. And so in December, using CARES Act funding from the federal government, the Concord Coalition to End Homelessness purchased First Church on North Main Street in order to use that to move the overflow shelter into that space, which could in fact hold 40 or more people properly distanced in the pandemic. That move has been a game changer. The First Church shelter opened on December 18th, and since then they have had use of the space. They've actually been up to 41 people in that shelter a couple of nights, with an average of about 28 people a night. I think it's important to realize also the Homeless Resource Center, which was similarly restricted in the number of people that it could hold, was also moved over to First Church. The long-term plan with that property is once we get on the other side of COVID and the 40-bed homeless overflow shelter behind the resource center can be used again, the Concord Coalition to End Homelessness intends to convert the First Church into housing, partially market rate, and about 10 units for people coming out of homelessness. It's of course a huge effort. They're also trying to expand the hours at the Homeless Resource Center. They're adding staff as they can. Thanks to the city, they are using community development block grant funds for that purpose. They're also looking for volunteers again, and folks can volunteer by contacting them at the following email address: office@concordhomeless.org. That's office@concordhomeless.org. Another key thing that is going on is that they will be inoculating or vaccinating members of the homeless population for COVID-19 on March 9th with a second shot on April 6th. This is because homeless have been identified as a vulnerable population under CDC guidelines. In fact, I heard this restated on the news this evening. And so that is going forward. There is great concern about how quickly COVID could spread amongst the homeless population. And they're also conducting they're also conducting COVID-19 testing at the homeless resource shelter. The other thing I would mention is that the resource center at First Church has been opened during some of the more severe weekend weather storms as a warming center, as they have throughout the year. That's why they want to add staff. The last thing I guess I would say is that the coalition is continuing to move forward with a by name census of the homeless population. This is a difficult endeavor, as you could imagine rather. But it's important to identify particularly the long-term chronic homeless, because they are the ones who require the greatest services, both from the city and the state. The plan is to, once we have an accurate by name state census of the homeless population, to start to work through that census, through that list of names, and figure out what the best way is to get those people out of homelessness and into housing with support. So I'm happy to answer.
Thank you so much for all of your efforts.
Thank you for the question.
Thanks. Appreciate the update. Who else will have anything? One of the councilors? Okay, Mr. Manager. Actually, you know what, Mr. Manager, could you yield for a second? Councilor Fennessy.
I just had a question that was prompted by Councilor Champlin's comments there. I guess this question is directed towards the city manager. Are we being provided with any information regarding the percentage of the population that has gotten the vaccine yet in the city?
No, I have not seen anything like that provided in that way. But I could give you a quick update on what we're doing with our involvement with distributing the vaccine. But I have not seen any percentage in terms of the population. I think they're approaching it more from the sectors that they're going after. But I have not seen anything on the percentage of Concord residents, so to speak.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that was one of my questions is if you could talk about two things. Number one is, can you talk about the relationship between the fire department and Health Human Services and how we are acting as a partner?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll think of the second thing when you're done with that.
Okay, so so far I got three things on the list until you give me the fourth. The first is, did I get my other computer up here? So the question about the weather vane. There's no special provision for the preservation of the weather vane. That goes with the building. It was sold as part of the building. But as you recall, Councilor, the city did save the tower bell or the gong, which is now located out on Bradley Street. And the firefighters union has it on display with the city's permission. So the city still owns that. It's just on display out on Bradley Street. So, and Councilor Hatfield keeps a good eye on it for us there. For the fire at HHS, the mayor, as a matter of fact, was trying to help out HHS and work with me on finding a location for the Center for Vaccinations. They had looked at the Concord Community Center up on Canterbury Road, but the problem is, of course, we use it. We have a lot of seniors up there. We have a lot of children up there, so we did not want to bring people potentially with COVID into that situation. So we suggested the Sears unit of the Steeplegate Mall, which HHS did go and end up there. And as a matter of fact, we dedicate 4 fire department employees on a regular basis every time that they provide the vaccination. And if you go up there to get your vaccination, they have several lanes. The city has its own lane, and we've been able to actually handle the registrations and providing the vaccinations through our paramedics. All, of course, reimbursed by the state. and I'm sure through the feds for all those costs. So we've been able to actually increase, going back to Councilor Fennessy's question, I think we've been able to increase the productivity up there and actually process more Concord residents through there quicker as long as the vaccine's available. So we're getting as much of the vaccine out to Concord residents as possible. If that answers the question, or the point, Mr. Mayor, that you're looking for. And there was something else. Councilor Hatfield had a question about farmers market, Winter's Farmers Market. So we've been working with Mr. Dupree on that. And really, there's probably two issues left. Oh, first of all, decided for this year, Mr. Dupree decided to, because he had to apply for grants and other things, decided to actually use the Families in Transition building down on South Main this year instead of locating it underneath the bridge on Store Street. The issue with the property on Store Street, as you may know, there's drainage structures down there, but there's also sewer interceptor that runs underneath that parking lot, which has several manholes. And those manholes, the concern was the original layout of the structure for the farmers market was going to be over those manholes. That's all fine and dandy as long as there's no reason to get into those manholes. The thought was from some folks is that you'd just be able to go into the greenhouse and then get into the manholes. Well, so many times you have equipment and an area that you need to operate in, and we weren't sure that was going to work. So Mr. Dupree's undertaking a survey of the area to see the best place for the location of the structures. So if he can do it and move forward, he does get the dollars he's looking for to do this. It would be for next year. So we're going to continue to still work on that. The other issue with having it directly under the bridge, they're trying to get as maximum height as possible on the structures, which brings it up to right underneath the overpass. And if you ever go underneath there and look up, be careful, there's pigeons. All the utilities run underneath that bridge. And the state, as you know, does go annually and they inspect those areas. The other utility companies have to get access to their equipment and their lines. So we just want to make sure the structure isn't too close to those lines and everybody can still do what they need to do. So that's part of the reason he's doing the survey that he needs to do to make sure it can work. But they're still proceeding to try to make that happen. But there's a lot of devils in the detail when you get down to the physical location of having it underneath there. And Mr. Mayor, you had a fourth.
I did. You have been way out front on the issue of background checks. And recently we've had another board group talking about this. And I just thought it would be important for not only the council, which I think most of them know, but for the community to know what you've been doing with background checks and for how long you've been doing it.
Okay. So one of the things that we do, as I'm sure you know, is when new employees are coming into the organization, we do a background check. Of course, New Hampshire has a different process they do than the rest of the country in terms of sharing information. So when we do background checks, we don't not only do a background check for New Hampshire, but we also do it with the FBI and do it for a national check. So we get it both ways. But one of the things we thought was a loophole years ago, and this is really good work done by the Human Resources Director, Jennifer Johnson. We do so if you're going to be teaching programs, particularly for anybody who's dealing with seniors or children, so think the library, think the community centers, think the golf course, think the arena. We do background checks for anybody who's a volunteer, anybody who's teaching programs, anybody who comes into contact with those folks or those children or those adults. Same thing at the golf course. But we also decided years ago to do it annually, because it's one thing to do it once, but you're then going to have to rely on, if something goes wrong with somebody, so to speak, are they going to voluntarily report that to you and then potentially lose their employment? Sometimes people won't make the right decision. So we've decided to do that on an annual basis. So your lifeguards, your rangers up at the golf course, your program folks over at the community center, everybody does it. So we've been doing that for a number of years now, and we think it's expensive. very time consuming because you have to run around a lot of information. But we think it's well worth it, and to protect the children, to protect our seniors. And I think everybody's used to it now. So if you're a volunteer over the library, or like I said, if you're a lifeguard and you want to volunteer and you want to work with us, expect us to go through this process. And being that we're fair to everybody about it, we really don't have much pushback from this. And if people don't want to go through it, then thank you very much. Go work, go volunteer or work someplace else.
I just appreciate kind of updating people because it's been a topic of conversation. Councilor Kinnison.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just have a question about psychological testing. Is that done in the police department or any other departments in the city?
Yes, the police department does it. As a matter of fact, I had to go undergo psychological testing for when I came to the city, and we've done that occasionally for certain key positions in the organization, but not all, because there's only so much you can learn. It's my mother's fault primarily for my issues, and I told her that, so she knows.
Well, I'm glad you passed.
I'm telling your mother. Okay. Do you have anything else you'd like to share?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Any other counselors? Last shot? Okay. Seeing none, I think that takes us to adjourning, unless anybody else has anything else for the better of the organization. So with that, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, Councilor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Councilor Champlin,
C.
Councilor Fennessy,
We.
Councilor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilor Keach,
Yes.
Councilor Kennison,
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic,
Yes.
Councilor Mattson,
Yes.
Councilor Nyan,
Yes.
Councilor Pierce,
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Councilor Todd,
Yes.
and Councilor Werner.
Yes.
Great. Well, with that, motion to adjourn is approved. Councilman Mattson, do you have one last thing you want to share? Or saying
No,
goodbye?
I'm just waving goodbye.
All right. Everyone have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Please stay healthy. Wear your mask, and we'll see
Keep
you.
your distance.
Double mask.
Get ready to-
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye, everyone.